visits are sort of, delivering some high-level message and also providing, the warnings, what would happen. The latest U.S. intelligence assessments that have been reported in the media warn that Russian President Putin could attempt to test NATO's resolve within the next couple of years. CIA Director John Ratcliffe traveled to Moscow to meet with Russian officials yesterday. It was a little bit of mystery at first because a lot of people tracked C-17 traveling to Moscow. Then it was revealed that CIA Director made a rare visit to Moscow. The substance of the meetings and the issues discussed, of course, have not been disclosed so far. One thing we know that ahead of Ratcliffe's visit, the United States reportedly asked Ukraine to temporarily halt drone and missile attacks on Moscow and other cities in northern Russia from Monday through Wednesday. Ukrainian officials were told that a senior U.S. official would be traveling to Russia. This is Ratcliffe's first visit to Russia as a CIA director, while a high-level visit by a senior U.S. intelligence official to Moscow is rare. It is not entirely unprecedented. For instance, then CIA Director William Burns traveled to Moscow in November 2021, where he warned Russian officials against launching an attack on Ukraine, outlined the consequences of such move, and laid out basically what Washington would respond and do. So basically, these types of visits are sort of, delivering some high-level message and also providing, the warnings, what would happen. And I think that was the substance of this high-level meeting. Some people worry about, traveling, behind Ukraine's back meetings with the direct high-level meetings between Washington and Moscow. One thing is sure that Director Ratcliffe has been one of the strongest supporters of Ukraine within the second Trump administration. And has played an instrumental role, if you say, in strengthening and expanding U.S. intelligence sharing with Kiev, especially at this phase of war when Ukraine conducts those important long-range strikes almost every day. So that is very crucial intelligence support that Ukraine has, finding basically optimal routes, corridors, and other intelligence essential planning and execution of those operations. So let's jump into the theories that might be topics for discussion that require their rare visit from the CIA to Moscow. This is something very surprising, right? The visit is most likely focused on Russia's intentions and potential plans to test NATO's resolve through a combination of measures, including intensified acts of sabotage that's already happening, an increased number of drone incursions, and potential drone strikes against critical infrastructure and the eastern flank of NATO, and even a potential limited military incursion. The latest U.S. intelligence assessments that have been reported in the media warn that Russian President Putin could attempt to test NATO's resolve within next couple of years, from 2026 to 2029. This marks a significant shift in U.S. thinking, because before that, Washington believed that Putin was unlikely to directly challenge NATO, while Russia remained fully engaged and absorbed with this war against Ukraine. So Russian missiles and drones entering NATO territory have already heightened those concerns that Moscow is probing the alliance responses and red lines. While a conventional land incursion remains considered unlikely at this point, U.S. intelligence assessed that risk might increase over time. Russia has also intensified its sabotage and hybrid operations across Europe, with recent explosions in arms factories in Italy and Bulgaria, as well as suspected arson attacks in Estonia. There was also a drone incident in Leipzig in Germany. So there have been a little bit of tensions and disruptive operations have been intensified on the European soil. Russia has also established a network of at least 10 drone launch bases near its borders with Ukraine and Belarus, equipped with long-range strike drones and capabilities to potentially reach NATO territory. This is latest significant development. Some of those facilities are already being used against Ukraine, and in the future, it poses a significant threat to NATO. because Russia has a capability right across the border to launch those drones. Therefore, during his rare visit to Moscow, CIA Director Ratcliffe will likely warn Russian officials against any plans to escalate or take more assertive action against NATO, and lay out some of the countermeasures or consequences that Moscow will face if they take that path. There's also a likelihood that Ratcliffe's discussions will address Russia's potential plans for another round of mobilization and the reported preparations to integrate additional 30 to 50,000 North Korean forces into Russian army. Such a move would represent a significant further escalation of the war, providing Moscow with additional manpower to sustain offensive operations. It would also mark a substantial expansion of North Korea's direct involvement in Russia's war against Ukraine. So this is another topic of concern for Washington to raise. And finally, in my theory, another topic of possible discussion would be Iran, because yesterday the United States announced and is preparing to take new measures against Tehran, aimed at significantly increasing economic and financial pressure on the Iranian regime. Washington announced Operation Economic Outcast, aimed at economic lifelines that sustain Iranian regime and IRGC. So basically, this operation essentially represents an expansion of secondary sanctions targeting countries, companies, or other entities that continue to do business with Iran. So Russia is particularly relevant in this context because, as we all know, Moscow has provided Tehran with significant support, including trade, economic cooperation, and most importantly, military assistance. Russia has also provided Iran with targeting and intelligence support related to U.S. assets in the Gulf, including CIA facilities, which is also another layer and significant intelligence and security dimension for Ratcliffe's discussions in Moscow. So the visit could therefore involve warning Russia about consequences facilitating Iranian activities against U.S. interests and clarifying how Washington's expanding pressure campaign against Tehran would affect Russian-Iranian cooperation. And broadly, I think those are the three main topics that could be discussed by CIA director, and that's why it required the high-level visit, because Washington seems to be very concerned on those major issues that U.S. possesses, like some cards to play in this talks and conversations with Moscow. The first obvious one is to increase support for Ukraine. That would be, for instance, next coming months will be very difficult and crucial for Ukraine to survive because Russia ramp up ballistic missile and other types of missile production. So if Washington decides to enable Starlink strikes inside Russia, that would be a huge gain for Kiev. Another one is to go after the sanctions evasion networks, because sanctions are in place, we all know, but there is also other layers that can be put and increase pressure on Moscow economically and financially, and U.S. possesses those mechanisms and tools, especially secondary sanctions, or go after the countries that facilitate dual exports and support Russia's economy. Those are the major things that U.S. has in the toolbox to sort of warn Russia if they decide to do something about escalate further. U.S. has some other tools to go against Kremlin, and also if Russia decides to further escalate against NATO, they will have serious repercussions, and maybe U.S. will, with allies, would escalate more to sort of then find some sort of a off ramp and decrease the tension. It started not even in 2014, but in 2008. Russia's invasion of Georgia, because that didn't provided necessary wake-up call in Europe, in NATO capitals, to sort of increase investments in defense funding, and sort of have a political response to Moscow that this is not going well for you, and we will we'll impose sanctions. And if you know that there were no any sanctions after Georgia, and also then Ukraine happened, right, in 2014, and still aliens lacked these certain type of response that will change mind and change Putin's appetite and its fixation on Ukraine. If allies and both, especially European ones, provided substantial military support and helped Ukraine to transform militarily and helped this defense industrial base that Ukraine now has, I think 2022 would likely be different. Unfortunately, time has been lost in that period, but I think we've seen some signs in the positive direction that European countries and capitals are now boosting their defense spending, the production. There's not necessarily enough still, but things are progressing in the right direction. And Ukraine is a bastion and basically a frontline defender of the European security today, and the future European security architecture is impossible to be built without Ukraine. So allies and both Europeans and North Atlantic allies should realize that and support Ukraine as much as possible, and provide more support to sort of find the solutions to this war, and solutions in that way that sort of prevents another invasion in 2, 3, or 5, or any number of years that Russia decides, oh, maybe we have appetite to go to launch another campaign. So cost of this war should be high enough for Russia to prevent them to not go another invasion, and also to increase pressure on Putin and the Kremlin to sort of start genuine talks. I know that this would not happen in coming months, because Russia again sees winter and coming months as a window of opportunity. But maybe next spring provides some sort of an opportunity to find that way. At this moment, we're far away from peace, because Russia is not interested in peace talks. Russia is interested only in Ukrainian surrender. And this is not happening. This won't happen. Ukrainian resistance has been there for well over 4 years. So, and in coming months, as I said, Russia sees an opportunity that will possibly emerge in autumn, when the drone effectiveness reduces, and that provides Russian military possibility to sort of move forward with their infiltration tactics, and also the winter is coming, and as I mentioned, Russia has a substantial number of ballistic missiles, and Ukraine, on the other hand, lacks interceptors, and this will be a very difficult winter. Russia will again go after the Ukrainian energy grid and other critical infrastructure. So they see, I think Putin is convinced that time is on his side still, and Russia still has the ability to break the Ukrainian resistance, which I think is a false idea. But that's their commitment. So in coming months, I don't see any possibility of peace talks or some kind of negotiations. And this has been evident for past several months already, because basically talks have been stalled, and I don't think that's going to happen at least next spring.